Hello.
Hello.
Welcome to.
Welcome to PA 101. Okay, so each of the racks are the same.
Yep.
So, same as before, just a refresher, there's a power conditioner in each one of them that powers everything in the rack and protects it in case of lightning strikes, voltage spikes, something like that. The idea is this will sacrifice itself to protect the rest at any point in time. It's not a fail-safe, but it works most of the time. This is a blank. It actually does nothing. If you see them in the older racks, your wireless mic is just a receiver that is tied to the rest of the antenna setup wherever they are. In the case of the older systems that I haven't redone, or that I didn't put in from scratch, there is a mixer separate from the amplifier. Okay, so the mixer is where the signals come in and gives you the ability to change volumes on things independent of each other. Amplifier is what actually powers the speakers. So on the systems where I modified them, all I essentially did was add an additional amplifier for the speakers that I added. So they're separate, but same. So the way this works, the wireless microphone from these first 4 channels only feeds into the habitat. So you've got your volume there. What I don't like about this is you've got 3 points of volume this way. It gets confusing, and sometimes you have to find the happy medium, otherwise it distorts. So you've got your channel volume, which is signal from the microphone. You've got the mix volume, which is the master for these 4. Master 2 is for these 4. But I can route either into either. So essentially the wireless mic will be master 1, which then goes to the habitat, so you've got a volume master for the habitat itself, okay? Not always, but generally speaking, if we can get the amplifiers set and not touch them, it's probably better. It's not always going to be the case. It kind of depends on how things are going, but like in this case, the page is only powering these speakers, but with the paging signal coming in here, it's routed to both, so it'll feed both. So that's where it could potentially get a little confusing, because if the page signal is a little bit weak in the habitat, but it's really strong on the other, you got to figure out how to balance it without messing up the wireless
So we have a lot of
microphone
testing to do.
to here. Yeah.
Okay.
So everything works pretty decently in all, except possibly the lion. I know we had some issues getting that quite right. This is why. There's too many points where we have to adjust volume. Not the end of the world, it's just kind of a nuisance because you can't hear it.
Right.
You gotta run back and forth and just check it back and forth. So that's the way it works. So troubleshooting then, if, like in this case, if you don't get the paging signal, there are components inside that we gotta worry about. Because everything is fed wirelessly, there is, inside here, there's a belt pack. So technically all the wireless components are meant to be wireless in-ear monitors, like on a concert tour stage, something like that. But the technology works great. And with these belt packs, there's an adapter inside that plugs it into power, so we don't have to worry about batteries. And the antenna is hardwired into it as well, so we don't have to worry about it. So it's not like we're worrying about it being this portable thing. It's just, that's the way it's set up, because they discontinued the products that I would have normally been able to use and put in the rack. So that is the only other component that does have a volume knob on it. So if overall the paging signal is weak, we can bump that volume up a little bit and get that stronger into the system. So 4th point of volume that we have to worry about. So I want to find where the happy medium is with everything and try to get that established and match everything across the board. So that's where everything being off right now helps. I'm going to modify the visitor center a little bit. Then I've got to do a little bit of modification in here, because what we're doing is we're going to split the paging from the music. So the music comes in essentially like on your left ear, so left channel. Paging comes in on the right channel. So that way everything on this half of the zoo gets everything, but then over on the north side, or what will future be the other side, music can be different. It doesn't have to be the same. So at least for now, the north side won't actually get the music signal from here.
Okay.
Well, technically it'll get it, but we're not gonna be using that, we'll use the other, so. Yeah, so now, if things start getting a little bit warbled, you know, something's distorted, but it's not, nothing changed, flip the power off,
Okay.
turn it back on.
Good. We had that.
Yep.
On the
Yeah.
aviary
So-
last
Yeah.
week, yep.
Because things are wireless, it is
So you
not
said-
digital, it's analog because it's a little bit more solid and stuff like this. And I get better range out of it, all that fun stuff. And nobody yet makes a digital wireless in-ear monitor system that's worth a crap, so. It's analog, so it can stray just a little bit over time. It's not something they normally address because it's on for an hour for a concert and off again, so it doesn't matter. So that's where if we can get in the habit of maybe every Saturday night or Sunday night, shut it off, Monday morning, you turn it back on, it just kind of gets a reset, just like a computer. Everything will work. But if something were to happen and you get some weird distorted noises, something's not working right, flip the power switch, count to 10, turn it back on, it just reboots everything and it'll probably be fine.
Okay.
It'll likely take care of all of the issues. So. And that is pretty much it. All of the habitats are built to be as close to the same as possible. You know, things might be in a slightly different location within the rack depending on, you know, available space and whatnot, but they should all be labeled very similar. It's entirely possible. I worded something slightly different, but they should all be essentially the same.
So page is when you're talking.
Page is the signal coming from the visitor center.
Okay.
Okay. Habitat is always whatever is within the structure itself or the
Okay.
habitat itself. And page should always be what's coming from the visitor center. So if there are speakers, like in the aviary, yeah, like in the aviary, for example, there's speakers inside, which would be habitat. There's speakers outside, which would be page, but there it's also split, so the stuff on the east side can work with a wireless microphone that won't go anywhere else. So there's additional splits in there that make it more. Lion would be almost identical to this. So there's one amp for the habitat, one for the page, and I believe it's the same setup other than that. So
So when we turn on the mic for like Tiger,
yeah,
will it just go to, will it
it
just
only
stop?
goes here.
Will
Yep.
it just stop the music? Like, do we have to push anything besides the microphone?
It won't stop the music, so it's
Okay.
not
You have
going
to
to
turn that down
override.
then?
So I would say that's where you can come in and turn down the music a little bit.
Okay.
So once we get everything at a place where we're happy with the volume
Yeah.
levels, it sounds good, it's not distorting, we like the levels, we can put a mark on it, and that's your target. So
Right.
if you're going to come in and do a talk, I would say just turn the paging one down.
Okay.
Just turn it down, and the rest will work just fine.
Okay.
Perfect.
I can set overrides, so when you're talking, it mutes the rest, but it's only gonna mute it or
Yeah,
bring
that'll
it down
distract
while
you.
you're talking, so it's
Right.
gonna be back and forth
Yeah.
a lot, so
Okay.
it doesn't make sense.
Okay.
So you just come in, turn the page down,
Okay.
off we go. The rest will be fine.
Okay.
But we'll set little
Yeah.
marks once we're content with where everything is.
Right, that sounds
So
great.
it'll
Perfect.
change a little bit since I'm reworking things, so.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know, it worked last fall. We're gonna make it a little bit better, just
Okay.
tweaking the stuff that we figured out that wasn't quite right. And then, like I said, with me rewiring things a little bit, it'll make some changes, so. But that's that.
That's easy.
And then as far as like the main one up there, it's just the power button and then it just goes to everything.
Yep.
And then it's just per habitat once you
Yep.
talk. Okay.
And
Yep.
nothing has to be changanged up there when she's talking, when she's using the
Nope,
mic.
just
Okay.
turn the page down
In each
Okay.
one,
in
okay.
whichever habitat you're talking.
Okay.
And that'll kill whatever music is being played or any announcements. You won't hear the announcements if that's happening.
Sure, okay.
Because you're talking instead. But
Sure.
theoretically, you've got a radio, so if there is an emergency, you're gonna hear it anyway and can verbally announce it.
So maybe inside every little cubicle, we could write a little,
Yep.
a step process. So that way,
Yep.
if
Yep.
someone's
You
on
can
in
do
here,
that.
turn your page down, then you
Yep.
can hook up your mic, go talk, come back, turn your page back up.
Yep, and the microphones only work within their one habitat, because they're all on a different channel. I was hoping to make a way where you could use one and it's just gonna pick up wherever you
Right.
are.
Yeah, that's good.
There's too much overlap with the antennas because of trying to get the right ranges out of everything. I'm gonna try something different on Leopard, so it's possible we can make that one work, but just because of the range we have to get and the signal strengths we need to try to accomplish, it's always gonna pick up somewhere you don't want it. So that's where each one is separate. It has its own. most of these are on the same frequency band, but there are 2 of them in use. So there's technically a J10 and there's some H11 out here. So it's 2 different bands, so we can't mix and match completely anyway, in part due to availability. And then just trying to keep the frequencies clean because we are using stuff with the wireless transmission of everything in addition to the microphones. And we still have to worry about digital TV stations and radio stations that are out there too. So
That plug-in on the top, what's that
yeah.
for?
This,
No, on the left-hand side.
it's just an extra outlet that's a part
Oh,
of that power
perfect,
strip.
okay.
So you could use it as power if you had to, but it's
Okay.
it's just
there. Okay,
it's just
perfect.
there. And this isn't hooked to anything. It's just their label plate from when they put it in. Normally, what you have with those, if you've got a little bit more complex system, they're all networked together, and then that way they can plug a computer in and get into the programming of things. But in this case, it doesn't really matter. So on the older system, so this one, Lion. Actually, there is one spot in the aviary. There are volume knobs. In this case, this mixer has 2 hooked up to it. I don't know which channel. I don't know which one is which. I would suggest just not using all except possibly the aviary. So there's 2 of them on this habitat someplace.
Yep.
One of them is going to control this master,
Okay.
and the other is going to control this master. It's going to really trip things out if you try to use it.
Sure.
So
Oh, okay.
they're locked up
Yep.
behind the plastic. Don't lose the key. Don't worry about it.
I
Because
think it's just hanging out there.
yeah. So the aviary is the only one where you could actually utilize it and actually make it a benefit. It's inside, so when you walk up the steps on this side in that office,
Okay.
there's a volume knob on the wall. It's black. It's just got it says JBL. It's just got a knob on it. So that will control the volume of things inside the aviary. So it's just a way where you can bump it down if it's a little bit much because the volumes are kind of set across the board. So it's just a way to get a little extra control out of it. But that's the only one that has a separate volume control.
Okay.
And you don't have to use it, but it will override whatever the physical position is here.
Okay.
So if that is off, it doesn't matter where you put this.
Okay.
Okay, so just keep that in mind with that one. So if you're not getting anything inside the aviary, inside the main structure, check that volume knob because it needs to be up. And 3/4 is always a good place to start with that one
Okay.
because it won't exceed whatever this is at because it can't move the physical knob, but it overrides everything up to that point.
Okay. Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, that's it. Any
Does
other
this
questions?
one, can she play her own music that's only in Tiger?
No.
It cannot.
No, we don't have individual habitats set up at this point. There's
Okay.
room to do it, so at some point we can.
The
Okay.
Discovery Barn, you can.
Discovery Barn, you can, and that will broadcast to everything on the north
Oh,
side.
okay.
But it's just the Discovery Barn and the Visitor Center that have the ability to broadcast music at this point.
Okay.
That's something we could certainly add. There's room in the racks to do them. The only exception is probably the aviary. I think I shoved a bunch of stuff in there now that wasn't anticipating, just adding more. So that might be the only exception. But otherwise, we could pretty easily do that to other places. So, and it would be the same thing that we've got at the Visitor Center. So we could set up an SD card that has, like in this case, something that is, you know, suitable to whatever their native environment would be, wherever their homeland is, Siberia, whatever the case may be. Get music that matches that, and we can just set it on a loop, and it'll loop indefinitely until it turns off.
That'd be awesome. Because aviary would be great to have bird
Yeah.
sounds in
Mhm.
there.
Yep,
Yeah.
yep. So like the one loop that I created for that, it's 4 hours. You know, there's a thunderstorm that rolls through, there's animals, and it kind of shifts a little bit throughout the course of the time. And we could do something similar for these.
Cool.
You know, like in the aviary, we could set it up so for a while we've got some barnyard, like chickens and stuff like that, and then it switches over to some African bird song, and then it switches over to whatever
Yeah.
else.
That'd be great.
And we can even set it up so that within that audio file, there's blank spaces. So you've got a couple hours throughout the day where there's nothing, just to give
Yes,
everybody a
yeah.
break.
Yeah.
But we can pretty easily do that, put it on an SD card. So basically all you do, you turn the system on and you hit play, and it'll loop. You might have to hit the repeat button,
Right.
but we could pretty easily do that.
Yeah, because it'd be kind of great if you did, you know, a certain time of the day, whatever we decide, and then from 8 o'clock to the next morning, nothing. And
Yeah.
then it just automatically plays
Yeah.
every day.
It's not something where for the sake of cost, it's not something where we can actually schedule.
Okay, okay,
So it'll be something where, you know,
just have
if
to-
there is a 12-hour day,
perfect.
we'll make a audio file that is that long.
Oh, yeah, that's perfect.
So you hit play, so at the same time, every day you're gonna have the same blank spots, the same everything else.
Yeah.
We could do something like
Yeah,
that.
that'd be great. Yeah,
And we could even, if we do it that way, you don't have to repeat anything. So
Right.
you
Just
just,
press
you
play.
turn it on and you hit play at 8 or close to it.
Right.
Or 9 o'clock, whatever. Whenever you're in there, you can do it, you hit play, it's gonna go through its timed out audio file essentially. That's that. And we can do a couple of them if we need to change it up a little bit, so it's not the same every day, but